work.
And what are you working on now, or what are you looking to talk about now, about what your own work?
Well, with my own work, as I said, I've been continuing the Darkover series. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is 7, I think. 7? No, yeah, 7. Is Thunderlord, which you can see the Marion's name because she made up Darkover, and then there's me. And this has been out for a few years. The next one after that, the working title is the Lehren Gambit. Betsy assures me that that is a title that her father, Donald A. Walheim, would have loved, but she does not. And so she is going to change it. And the last we discussed it, she said she would put it on the schedule for next year. And that one is particularly apt because the elevator pitch is the brutal tyrant ruler of the Terran Empire uses or resorts to mechanical mind control in order to suppress resistance. And it's up to Darkover's natural telepaths to defeat him and restore freedom to the galaxy.
That sounds very interesting.
Yeah. And it's so topical. And I sold it on submission. I think that would have been, where are we? 2014, I think. 12 or 14, somewhere back there. Yeah. So I was just a little bit pressured. And what I'm working on now is going back in the timeline of Darkover. With the Lehren Gambit, I wanted to bring Darkover and the Terrans back into a, if not harmonious, at least cooperative relationship. The last book that was published before I took over had the Terrans leaving Darkover. And no, we cannot leave it this way, because Marion's original vision of Darkover was to use the cultural clash between this planet, where people can speak mind to mind and can't lie that way, and have different, they have the compact code of honor, and they have different sensibilities with mechanized colonial Terran Federation Empire, whatever it is at that point in time. And it's the culture clash that really intrigued her, so I had to bring them back. But then I had the idea of, so these psychic communities work in towers with a capital T, and each tower has its own history, its own story, and she's alluded to them from time to time in her own work. But I thought it would be really interesting to do a novel or a series of novels about how they came to be founded. So the book I'm working on now is Aerelon. It is not the oldest tower, but it is the most prestigious. And how it was established, and Marion said it was founded by a daughter of Hastur, which is one of the ruling families, like the ruling family. And so I have a situation where a young girl gets traumatized with psychic ability, gets traumatized in a war, and goes to one of these communities, heals, and then finds a way to create a new tower where people with these precious abilities can study and develop them, free from the warfare that's sporadic at this time period. So I'm looking at anti-war, I'm looking at women's empowerment, I'm looking at making hard choices, and it's about 3/4 drafted. I also have a YA urban fantasy, which is, it's on spec, meaning I don't have a contract for it. It's been through several rounds of beta reading, and my agent and I have talked about it. It needs one more serious rewrite. I'm just waiting until I have enough time to do that. It's so the elevator pitch is teenage astronomy geek lesbian high school senior takes on aliens bent on fomenting chaos by destroying the next great leader of peace. Who happens to be at her high school. Actually, it happens to be her, but they get it wrong. So I actually got the idea. I went to Launchpad Astronomy Workshop back in 2012. And I'd always wanted to study astronomy. I didn't have any idea what I was getting myself into, studying an entire college semester of astronomy in 1 week. But my brains did not explode. And I came home just so turned on by astronomy. And I wanted to write a character who shared that passion.
I think writers have a lot of interests, and we certainly like to learn new things.
We do, yeah. And we're teachers because we teach all the time in our writing. So right now, going back to anthologies, I do not have contracts for any further anthologies because the Sword and Sorceress and Darkover and Lace and Blade were all published by Marion's Literary Trust. And first of all, they never intended to become publishers. They sort of fell into it when Aerelon stopped doing that. And the person doing most of the work really wanted to retire. So I have been thinking, because I brought the name Lace and Blade and with me, I have the ability to take it to a different publisher. And I haven't put a lot of energy so far into finding another publisher. I might be able to do that. The challenge, that's the right word, Deborah. The challenge is that I feel very protective of my authors. And I'm not willing to ask people of the professional caliber that I work with to entrust a story to me unless they get paid decently. So doing an anthology where people get paid from the sales of the book, no, I am not doing that. And 2 cents a word, I am not doing that. I want at least CIFWA Pro rates, which right now are 9 cents a word for my authors. So, that means that the publisher would have to invest a number of thousands of dollars in payment for the stories. And before we can even talk, so that I don't know how possible that is. The era when I could have called up Betsy and say, "Hey, Daw's doing several anthologies a month. How about this one?" Those are long gone. So my idea, I think this was back in 2018. I've been sitting on this for a long time. At Worldcon, I think it could have been the NEBS last year. But I had a talk with a writer who, I think she does graphic novels, but that's neither here nor there, who does all of her publications by GoFundMe. And that's where she gets her advance. That's how she gets paid. And then the people that chip in get an autographed copy or, whatever, depending on the level. So my idea that I really haven't moved forward is to contact some big name authors that I've worked with and ask them to make a non-binding statement of interest in the next Lace and Blade. And it would be flat fee, 10 cents, 12 cents a word, which is a really good pay rate. And then I could make up a budget, and that would be my GoFundMe goal, with payment for professional cover designer and professional formatter, so it really looks good. And and then see if it flies. And if I get the, I don't know how many thousands of dollars, say 8,000, 10,000, whatever it is, which is a really low advance for a book, but would allow me to do it with the professional pay standards and professional production values that I would want. And then people that would chip in for at a higher value would get a hardback copy, and maybe if they gave me $5,000, they'd get a hardback copy autographed by all the authors, or something like that. So I've been thinking about that. I think I could do it with Lace and Blade more than the others, because I have the name and it has a reputation, and there's a rule in anthologies, which is that the narrower the theme, the deeper into the slush pile you have to dig to find stories that qualify. So Lace and Blade, of all these anthologies, has the widest range. I've had sword and sorcery. I've had not quite modern, but definitely early 19th century, turn of that century stories. And so it's a wider field, so I'm much more likely to get excellent stories. So I've been thinking about that, and
I think that's useful for people to know, because I think most people don't have any idea what goes into planning a book and how much money it takes to put a book out. You know.
Yeah.
They just only go to Amazon or whatever, and click on buy this, but all the work that goes into it is kind of invisible at that point.
Right, and there's a lot of books that are very sloppily produced,
Mm-hmm.
And in certain fields, which I will not name, the readers consume mass quantities of books in those genres. So the books are quickly written. They may be edited or not, if the writers are familiar with that field, or if not. And but when I think of my traditional publishing experience, and everything that goes into that book, so I will turn in a manuscript that has been through several revisions that I can do, and I've had a beta reader. It could be my husband. It could be a colleague. In the case of Darkover books, the trust must approve the manuscript before it goes to the editor. And then it's professionally edited by somebody with a really keen eye for things that don't work. It gets copy edited so that if I've changed a character's eye color, or I made punctuation mistakes, or my grammar's pretty good, but I'm still perfectly capable of messing up the subjunctive. We don't have the world's greatest relationship. Mostly I get it right, but sometimes aliens eat my brains, and what was I thinking in that sentence? So I have somebody with an eagle eye going through that. And then once the manuscript is typeset, not only do I proofread it, but they have a separate proofreader going over it. Even so, we always miss things, but we miss far fewer things than somebody who just takes their draft and slaps it up on for Kindle. And then while this is going on, the cover painting has been commissioned. I've had a bunch of different artists for my covers. One of my favorites was Vincent DeFate, who did the cover for my very first published novel. And when that went out of print and I wanted to bring it out as an ebook, he gave me permission to use the cover painting, which was just wonderful because it's really beautiful. And then I had one artist for the early Darkover novels that I wrote. And then he and Daw parted ways. And I think Haster Lord, the one with the castle on it, that's stock image that Betsy came up with. But then for the next one, she said, you got any druthers? Who would you like for your cover artist? And of course, I can't have somebody like Michael Whalen, who A, is way too expensive, and B, he wasn't doing covers at that point in time. But I went back and looked through, and this one, this is a better example. It's a wrap around. You can sort of see the rest of it underneath all the stuff.
The title of it is.
This is, pardon?
The title is says Children of Kings. Is that what it says?
Yes.
Could look it up on Amazon or somewhere and see another, you know.
Right. Right. So this is Matt Stawicki. I'd seen his work, and I said, would that be possible? And she said, sure. So he's my Darkover artist, and he's also, I did an epic fantasy trilogy that came out from Daw called the Seven-Petaled Shield, and he did the covers for that. So meanwhile, Betsy and Matt are talking about the cover painting, and it's an actual painting. It's a beautiful piece of art. And then there's a professional cover designer that takes that art and decides the type for the title and where it's going to be placed. And then the interior of the book gets formatted. It's not just so you can see that there's a design here. Where the margins are gets formatted. Where the page number and the names of the author headers here and here, all of that require, and the font. Move this really, really close. If you can see that there, yeah. I think this is Garamond. That's used a lot. But all of those things require thought and a skill set that is not necessarily the same as the writer. So if you're going to self-publish a book, and I've actually done a couple with help from a lot of people. So this is a collection of my Darkover short fiction. I asked Hannah Shapiro, who painted covers for some of the Darkover books. Hawk Mistress was her work. If she had any paintings where I could buy the rights to them, because I couldn't afford to commission a new painting, and she's not painting anymore. So she had this one, which is very beautiful and dramatic. And I paid her for the right to use it. So that was a cost. I had a professional designer do the cover, and you can see the thought that he put into the font for the title, and where the title is placed, and how the back is arranged, and then so I tried to replicate all of those elements. I paid some people to do it. I exchanged labor with some people to get this, to get a final product like that. And I see, okay. So back in 2017, I was on the jury for the Philip K. Dick Award, which is for original paperback science fiction. And so people would send us stuff, and publishers would send us stuff, and people sent us their self-published stuff. And it was always a shame when a book was interesting and decently written, and the production values were so bad. We didn't consider the production values, but they make a difference in terms of the reader's first impression, and the ability to get books in a bookstore. So I mentioned that the Trust, when they published anthologies, I don't think they brought out Ingram versions at all. I could be completely wrong about that. But usually people just put them up for Kindle and Nook, so on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and maybe on Kobo, which has its own reader, and maybe on Smashwords, to get other kinds of ebook readers. And they might do a print version through Kindle Direct Publishing, and maybe not, but bookstores don't like to carry those because they don't make any money on them. Amazon makes money. But it is possible to self-publish either in hardback or in trade paperback in other ways. Lightning Source and Ingram Spark, those programs, they require a higher degree of book production preparation, the format in which they want the interior and the demands for the cover and stuff like that. And it's not free. So people who just want to say that they've published a book will just throw something up on Kindle, and then they wonder why it doesn't sell. If you want to self-publish, I think you should act like a publisher to the best of your ability.
All right. Do you have any,
but that's me.
If there was one piece of advice you could give anybody watching this on submitting stories or their writing, what would you pick?
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm going to give one of each. In terms of submitting stories, read the guidelines. Do not send horror to a romance market. Do not send pornography to a fantasy market. Fantasy means something quite different. So read the guidelines. That's true for novels as well as short stories. If a publisher says that they are open to submissions, but they want a 5-page synopsis and the first 100 pages, don't send them the complete manuscript. Send them what they asked for. So, and in terms of writing, one piece of advice: stay connected to your heart. Writing is something that we learn to do, whether it's learning to make the figures or whether it's learning the elements of fiction or the elements of grammar. But those aren't sufficient. You can have a beautifully grammatically correct story that has no life because there's no heart connection. And what lights us up and fires our imagination and makes us feel like we're flying when we're writing, that's coming from us, and it's different from all of us. And it's, for me at least, it's different from time to time, where I am in my life, what season it is, what I'm grappling with. I will find something that it just feels like it's pouring out of me, or sometimes it's pouring through me. It's coming from somewhere else. I'm just taking dictation here, and it's this wonderful, exhilarating experience that makes the act of writing itself so rewarding, and it makes stories that connect with readers. Not all readers. Not everybody wants to go to that place with me, but the people that do just love it. And then there's this wonderful connection through the story. So stay connected to your heart when you write.
All right. Well, thanks for your time. And for those of you watching, if you like this, please hit that like and subscribe button and hit the bell notification so you know when I put up more videos. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.